In a small town, there was a small church where people came to pray every day. It seemed like an ordinary church, but there was still something strange and unique about it. One of the visitors who came every day was not human. It was a dog. The four-legged friend sat in the back of the church during the sermon and left after the service. Dogs were, of course, welcome in the church as long as they were well behaved. So the presence of the beast itself was not the most unusual part of the story. However, the fact is that the dog came alone. It seemed that she had no owner and came of her own free will. No one knew anything about her, even where she came from and where she then went. However, she behaved well and did not cause agitation or alarm. The priest and parishioners were struck by how sad the dog looked. She had a sad look and her ears were drooping. Every day she sat in the same place, staring at one point. This began to frighten some believers, and some began to think that the dog could see dead people. But the shepherd knew dogs. He owned several in his life. It became obvious that this poor animal was just incredibly sad. While a dog of this type should look strong and healthy, this creature looked thin and frail. It seemed like he had no home. She lived on the street and looked for leftovers to feed herself. Perhaps she came to church for warmth, protection, and communication. But the priest could not think that the dog had come to ask for help. But what help? After the sermon, the priest explained his thoughts to some parishioners and asked them to help him bathe and clean the animal. Fortunately, people agreed and hoped to provide any possible help to the poor animal. The dog deserves happiness. So they slowly approached the dog, who looked at them curiously. It was clear that the dog was not cruel or aggressive. He was just curious. When he got bathed and shampooed for the first time in a long time, he started wagging his tail. The dog looked happy. A little human kindness and interaction clearly made a difference. But while cleaning the dog, the priest made a statement. He had seen this dog before, but could not say exactly where or when. He racked his brains as the men dried the dog and offered it some food, which it happily gobbled down. The priest decided to put the riddle aside for now. At that point, it was more important to make sure the dog was happy and healthy before being released again. Therefore, it was decided to take her to the vet. There she was to be examined to ensure that she was in good physical condition. To bring the dog there, the man took his old leash on which he kept his dog. Oddly enough, the four-legged friend put on the leash without any problems, and even seemed to enjoy the moment. He obediently walked beside me all the way to the veterinarian. And he did not make any unnecessary movements when he was examined and carried out several tests. Fortunately, the results came quickly, and the dog turned out to be practically healthy. The veterinarian also checked the animal for a microchip. If there was one, they might be able to figure out who owns it. Unfortunately, the microchip could not be found. It was a dead end. It seemed they would never know who the dog belonged to. As they returned to church in disappointment, a boy came out of the store and noticed a priest with a dog. He ran up to the dog, hugged it tightly, and called it Tommy. The priest, completely understanding nothing, asked why the boy called him that. The boy replied that that was the name of the dog and that it belonged to an elderly woman in the area. Suddenly, the priest remembered where he had seen this dog before. It belonged to an elderly woman named Maria. She passed away a few months ago when old age finally caught up with her. To confirm his theory, he made a small detour and went to the house where Maria once lived. As if he knew where they were going, Tommy began to pull on the leash and led the priest straight to Mary's old house. It had to be true. Tommy sat up and looked at the house with glee. Now it was empty and abandoned, but it was clear that the dog had a connection to this house. But the priest had to confirm his suspicions once and for all. So he brought the dog back to the church and went into one of the back rooms where there are security cameras. The records were kept for 6 months. I hope they will contain footage from Maria's funeral. Perhaps he'll see something that will confirm the story and identify Tommy once and for all. So, the man began to review the footage. He was looking for the right time and the right day. And finally, he found it. The secret was now out. As Mary's coffin was slowly carried into the church, a dog followed her. It was Tommy. The shepherd did not remember him that day because there were too many people present. The dog took his usual position and looked at the coffin with longing as if knowing that he would never see his dearest person in the world again. The priest rewinded the video further and was shocked to see that whenever Maria came to the church for prayer, Tommy accompanied her. He would walk her to her usual seat and then sit at the back of the church and wait patiently for her to get up. The priest felt his eyes fill with tears. Tommy returned to the same place every day in the hope of seeing his owner again and being reunited with her. Seeing such devotion, the priest's heart broke. So he came up with a plan to adopt Tommy. He will take care of the dog, provide him with a home, and allow him to attend church every day. And although the priest will never be able to replace Mary, he will do everything possible to mend the dog's broken heart.